Module 7, the nervous system. The nervous system at the cellular level. There are two types of cells that make up the nervous system, neurons and neuroglia. You've already learned some information about neurons, and we will spend most of this course studying neurons, but you will learn a bit about neuroglia in the next section. A neuron is composed of three parts, the cell body, axons, and dendrites. The cell body, or soma, is where the nucleus is located. There are several mitochondria there as well, because neurons need lots of energy in order to send signals. Neurons also need lots of oxygen due to their great energy need, so if they're not exposed to oxygen for more than about 8 minutes, they can begin to die. There are Golgi apparatuses located in the cell body too. These are where the neurotransmitters are made. Remember when we talked about muscles, you learned that neurotransmitters are chemicals that diffuse across the synaptic cleft so that the neuron can communicate with other cells. Once neurotransmitters are made in the Golgi apparatus in the cell body, they are sent down the axon and are secreted from the synaptic vesicles of the presynaptic terminal. You may also remember that an axon is a process or extension of the nerve cell. There's another type of process called a dendrite. Dendrites are usually shorter than axons, and they bring messages to the cell body. So signals come into the dendrites and travel to the cell body of the neuron. Conversely, the axon sends action potentials away from the cell body. A good way to remember the difference between these processes is by thinking axon carries signals away. They both begin with an A. Then you'll remember that dendrites carry signals to the cell body. When a cell body is ready to send an action potential down the axon, it begins at the axon hillock, at the beginning of the axon. The action potential then travels down the axon to its end. An interesting fact about this signal is that it remains just as strong a signal from the beginning of its travel to the end of the axon, and some axons can be up to 3 feet in length. When we send electrical signals across wires to supply our homes with electricity, the electrical signal's power decreases as it travels due to friction and other energy losses. But the human body is an amazing structure, able to transfer signals without losing strength. Now, though some axons can be quite long, just know that others can be extremely small in length. Axons have a wrapping called a myelin sheath. It's fatty tissue that helps to speed up the movement of the action potential as it travels along the axon. The myelin sheaths are made by specialized cells called neuroglia that surround the axon. For peripheral nervous system neurons, the neuroglia are called Schwann cells. For central nervous system neurons, the neuroglia are called oligodendrocytes. The myelin sheath doesn't completely cover the axon. It has gaps called nodes of Ranvier. I'll discuss more about myelin sheaths, neuroglia, and these nodes in a later section. Now, as you move away from the cell body, some axons split into what are called collateral axons. At the end of axons are the presynaptic terminals, sometimes called axon terminals. Remember, these are the locations before the synapses, or small spaces between a muscle fiber or another nerve cell. Neurons can be classified based on how many processes they have. A process is just another word for extension from the cell. So an axon is a process of a neuron, and so is a dendrite. Well, the first neuron type is a unipolar one. It has only one process, the cell body being connected to that process. In these neurons, the part of the process carrying signals away from the cell body is the axon, but the part of the process carrying signals to the cell body isn't really a dendrite because it sends action potentials using the same process as an axon. We'll talk about that process later. Most afferent neurons, or those that send action potentials from the sensory neurons to the central nervous system, are unipolar like this. This is a bipolar neuron. It has two processes, hence the prefix bi. There's one axon and dendrites coming into one single process. Specialized afferent neurons are bipolar. Finally, this is a multipolar neuron. It has several processes, lots of dendrites, and a single axon. Actually, regardless of the number of processes a neuron has, it will only have one axon. Multipolar neurons are usually motor neurons in the efferent division of the peripheral nervous system, or something called association neurons. An association neuron is a neuron that conducts action potentials from one neuron to another neuron within the central nervous system. So, association neurons behave like a chain of neurons, receiving a signal and passing it on to the next neuron. Association neurons are found in the central nervous system.